Hello, my name is Andrew Van Gies, and I want to welcome you to another video in the series from Zwart Systems on our YouTube channel. We're hoping that you find these videos helpful, and we're today in lovely Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario, Canada. It's a frigid minus 14 degrees Celsius outside today, but that's not a difference when you're standing inside the greenhouse. It's always a beautiful day in the greenhouse. Today we're going to focus in on Zwart Systems irrigation booms. We offer a whole line of irrigation booms for different greenhouse applications. And today we're going to focus on our Perfect Rain 1 controller, which is a magnet-driven controller, dual rail. The magnets are going to set out the zones and show our end and start positions. And we're just going to go through the controller today so that you can reference it when you get your new controller. Please note also that this controller, although it works with the Zwart system, Perfect Rain system, it can also work on competitors' booms. If it's a DC motor that your boom is running and your controller is getting a little tired, maybe it's time for an upgrade, and this controller could be the one for you. Alright, so you have your Perfect Rain controller mounted to your boom, and of course the first thing we need to do is plug it in. That's just a standard outlet, nothing special. That power should be run with the boom hose system and run down the cart. So once we get it, we're going to plug it in, and we're going to see this boot up screen, lovely Zwart Systems logo, and you can see that the controller is working, the gears are spinning, so to speak, and we're starting to load the program. This may take a moment as it's got to take all the data in and see where it's at. And this is the first screen you're going to see when the boom loads up. Now we're going to go to Setup in the bottom left hand. As you'll notice, it's a touch screen. It's very bright. It's an industrial screen. They use it on many outdoor heavy equipment and things. And so this will work very well for you. You can touch it by hand, of course, or you can use a soft-tipped pointer that you can use with touch screens as well. Because I got those big chubby fingers, we're going to use the pen. First we're going to look at system configuration. Now system configuration is going to tell us a few things. One, we want to tell it how many zones are here. Now this is, like I said in the beginning, this is a magnet driven boom. So our home magnet will be on the one gable wall, our end magnet will be on the other gable wall. Right now, between those two magnets, it's one large zone. If we start to apply magnets to the boom rail, where the zone reader can read it, with each magnet we add, we start splitting up the space. So, from home to the first magnet is zone 1. Magnet 1 to magnet 2 is zone 2. Magnet 2 to zone 3 is 3. And then if the gable wall is next, then it's 4 zones. And so we just want to tell the controller that we are running 4 crop zones. It's very important to adjust when you add more magnets or remove magnets to tell the controller how many zones it has. We want to tell the boom, we can offer the boom to home at the home location. That's where the boom will come to rest when the cycle is complete. Or we can ask it to home at away, which would be the opposite end of the rails at the opposing gable end. And so we can select here if we want to do that or if we want to home it at away. And then we have watering mode. Now normal watering mode is what we're going to use for misting, propagation, just irrigating plants normally. So then that is normal mode. But then we also have step mode. So this is the stop-step water function for watering larger containers. The moment we're going to take you through normal watering, and we'll circle back to stop-step watering. So we want to be at normal watering. Now we have minimal motor speed. So this is a background check to say, hey, I don't want this boom ever to go lower than 20%. The reason for that is maybe you have some growers that take it onto themselves that they want to start changing settings. You can put in a default that I don't want it to go lower than 20 and I don't want it to go higher than 80. You can, of course, just by simply pressing the bar, move those anywhere you like along the bar, and you could leave them at 0 to 100. That's fine. But there are some growers, depending on the greenhouse, depending on the angle of the rails, perhaps they want to put a default there. We also have motor acceleration. So this is when we start the boom. Do we want it to go to 100% right away, or do we want it to get to 100% in a reasonable amount of time? This really speaks to the equipment. How hard do we want to work the equipment? If we put that motor acceleration to 50% speed, it'll get up to the 100% speed it needs to get, but at half the time, so that it can warm up and get to it. I would suggest leaving this at 50% or less. It can be at 100%, the boom will operate, just be a little bit harder on the motor. And then we have a no motion timeout. So when the boom is traveling, and should it hit an obstruction, like maybe somebody left a ladder in place or a full cart in the center path that we're trying to pass, then we're going to have the boom come up against it. It's going to sit there and try and pass that space, but it can't because there's something in the way. So in 0.7 seconds of trying, it's going to go to a no motion alert. So we can set that to 2.4 seconds all the way up to 5 seconds if we want. I would suggest leaving it down at 1.5 or so. That way it's not wearing out the wheels while it's waiting to time out. So another side of this is you could have some morning moisture on the rails, so it could do a little bit of a spin before it gets going. You may want to spread that out to 2 or 3 seconds if that is the case for you. It's not all the time, it's not everywhere. We see it more in propagation than in regular growing, but that just gives you a little bit more grace so it can take off before it times out. Once we've done this, we want to save what we've done, and now that's all set. The next we're going to go to zone setup. So what we have here is zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4. Remember, we selected 4 zones. This boom can be up to 32 zones, so there's plenty of opportunities. And when you see, if we were to do that, you would see all the zones populated, and you could scroll through them with the arrow keys. We're going to look at zone 1, and now we see our forward selection is crop 1. So just want to explain that for a moment. If we look at zone 1, this boom is set up as a right and a left. And so what we're doing is we have an opportunity that while the boom is moving forward, we want to water perhaps the right side only, and when it's in the reverse, maybe the left side only. That doesn't mean to say that we can't turn on booms right and left as we're going. It may just depend on your flow rate. Say if you had a 42-foot wide house, you would definitely do 21 feet on your way out and 21 feet on your way back, because we wouldn't have the infrastructure of volume to do 42 feet of irrigation all at once. And so that changes per greenhouse, but we're looking at this as really a left-right situation, and that's what we're seeing here in zone 1. So in our forward crop, we're looking at block A. And in our reverse, we're looking at crop 6. We'll get to our crop designations a little later, but what it does allow me to do is select a different crop that I want to put in this block. I can also select it to be a no crop, or I can select it to be crop 10 in that area. So I can change it very quickly. We'll save, and you see the zones, and we'll get back to this again. Exit. Now we can look at crop setup. Now, crop setup, we can have up to 16 crops. When we look at crop 1, here we have our forward valve selection. So when we have crop 1, we want our forward solenoid irrigation to be on. So this could be irrigation, mist. We could select whatever we want. And we know that designation because we wired the boom. So we know that valve 1 corresponds with solenoid 1. And then in the reverse, we'd like it to be valve 2, that's the other side of our boom. And whenever we water this, we like it to go at 90%. We can edit the name here, so we'll take out block A and we'll call it geranium. Save. Save. We'll just do a couple of these. Block B, we will edit the name, we'll delete it out, and we will call it Bacopa. Save. Save. And let's just go to number 4, and perhaps you want to do something different and name things in the stick date. So maybe this was week 1. Save. So it's kind of nice because you can save them to whatever names that your farm uses. So it could be 4-inch pots, 6-inch pots, could be geranium, bacopa, could be week 1, week 2, whatever you use as a farm designation, you can designate the name of that crop. So we can select that every time we water week 1, we like it to be on our misting valve, on the forward selection and on misting on the way back, and we like it to run at 100%. Save. Once you've populated all those crop names and the speeds you like them to run at and the side that you want that watering to be on, now we can go back to our zone setup and we can look at zone 1 and say when we're moving forward in this zone, gable wall to first magnet, on the left side forward I have geraniums, but on the right side I have week 1. So here I'll pick that, I'll go to geraniums, and on the reverse I'll go to week 1. My presets are already there, they're already in place. So that when I save this now, Bacopa or zone 1 is set up for geraniums in its forward motion and week 1 in its reverse motion. I can easily go back and make that edit. Maybe we've moved out with the week 1 product and we've made it also geraniums. Save. Now I have geraniums on both sides of the boom and it'll irrigate accordingly. So that is the way to get through our zone and crop setup. Next, we're going to look at schedule setup. Schedule setup is kind of interesting. We can look at our geranium and we can look at schedule 1 and we can edit schedule 1. So just going to backtrack a little bit. As you can see, we have 8 schedules available. The idea here is that we're going to make schedule 1 maybe a heavy misting, where it's going to be going a lot during the day and minimal during the night. In schedule 2, we're going to start backing that off. As those cuttings start to take root, we're going to back it off, and so we're going to change that schedule. So here when we go to edit, we can say that we want to start at, let's see, really, we're going to start at 6 o'clock. That's when the sun's coming up these days. 6:55, we can change the minutes. There we go, 6 a.m. And I would like it to repeat every 5 minutes. In cycle B, I would like to make a start time a little later on in the morning. So I'm going to say that at 10 a.m., I would like to back off a little bit and go every 10 minutes. And then in the afternoon, say around 3 3 in the afternoon. The sun's kind of fading away this time of year. I'm going to stretch that out to maybe every 20 minutes, and then starting at 6 p.m. I'm going to stretch it out to maybe 30 minutes. I'm going to save it. So that is now my schedule 1. I can do the same for schedule 2, edit, and I can make that next stage in that crop, schedule 3, schedule 4, and so on. And maybe we will just look at, maybe we're at schedule 5, edit, and now we would like to water in the morning. So we're going to start at 6 a.m. and we are going to engage it. So by pressing water, we're engaging it, and now we're kind of far down the road in that crop. We're going to say every 40 minutes starting at 6 a.m. Then we're going to go to cycle B, and let's just say that at 12 p.m., so noon, yeah, isn't that the thing? You go all the way around. So you can hold it down. You just got to make sure you don't go past 12 p.m. And now we're going to go maybe every, I don't know, 50 minutes for fun. But then we're going to get to cycle C. Now, we can set that to 6 p.m. And if we don't initiate the water toggle, so that is on, that is off, then that time, it'll do 55 minutes until it runs into 6 p.m. and it'll stop. That boom will sit quiet until tomorrow morning 6 a.m. If I turn on the water and give it a value, then it will start again and do something different until cycle D starts. Then it'll be quiet. So I could water into early evening and not through the middle of the night. As soon as I turn that off, this A cycle begins, B takes over, it stops at C, stays quiet until the next morning, A. If I were to turn this off, then I would only have morning misting until noon, and then the boom would stay quiet until tomorrow morning. So we're going to initiate that, we're going to save it, and we're going to save. And so now geranium, for instance, we just stuck them, so I want it schedule 1, save, and now geraniums will run on that time stamp. It's going to keep running on that 4 schedule that I gave it until I change it. So now 3 days later, I've come by, my plants are starting to stand up and look a little bit healthier. So we're going to move it over to schedule 2, save. And now that boom will run on schedule 2, whatever I set in my presets. I can do that for every crop. I can make my, where do I find my Bacopa? I can put that on schedule 6 because it's come a long way. And now geranium is running on schedule 2 and Bacopa is running on schedule 6. I can apply that to all the crops that I have under the boom. And so what the boom does is every 5 minutes, it says, okay, what needs to be done? It runs through the zone and picks up those crops that are on that timestamp. Then it looks at 10 minutes. What do I need to do? 15 minutes. What do I need to do? So it's just going to cycle through that until I deadhead against my cycle start times. So that's scheduling. Now we're going to look at a diagnostic tool. This is, I'm going to get my feet wet because I always do. I can press valve 1 and have water run. I can check my valve controls. I can check my running the motor control forward or back. I can also see the input switches. So the input switches are the home, the away, the zone, the wheel that's doing no motion, and we'll see those different sensors that we've wired into it turn blue and go clear as we pass those sensors. So it's just a little bit of a diagnostic tool to see. Clock setup. So clock setup is important from 2 aspects. One, when you get up to the clock, you can see what time it is and see if it's time for break yet or not. 2, you can use it. It's important when we get to scheduling, like we just went over. And 3, it's for future runs, which we're going to talk about shortly. So what you want to do is just kind of select your day, month, year, your hour, your minute, and save that. And that's pretty straightforward. We all had a digital watch once and had to do that, so you guys can do it yourself. Language. Now this is interesting. This is new for this controller. English, French, and Spanish. So this is a bit of a tricky thing, because if you put it in Spanish, all the words go to Spanish. And if you get into another frame and you don't read Spanish, you might have a hard time getting back. So you can go to English. That works for me. But French and Spanish are also included in this controller. Then we can go to Advanced. This we can do a factory reset or reboot the controller. Very rarely will this ever have to happen. I would say that you should call tech support before pressing said buttons. Quite often a simple pull of the plug and re-plug in will do it. But that's really all that's about. I want to talk about that for a moment. There is a small, very small battery in the controller. If the power were to cycle, so you have a power outage, a brownout, lightning storm or something like that that puts the power out, it will lose power, but it will keep the clock. So when it comes back on, all the settings will come back, and it will know that it's still the time. So that battery should be checked every 2 years or so and be replaced, but that way you don't have to come back and reprogram everything just because you had a power out on 25 booms. That's a crappy day. We're going to save and we're going to exit setup. So now we have the one that we come to, the main screen that you'll use most of the time. If you hit the hand or manual, you can move the boom backward and forward and just turn the valves off and on, and you can walk with it. So if you wanted to water along the way, you can just hit the buttons, hit the movement. I'm not going to do it because it's going to run me over, although I am big enough I could stop it. But here you're going to just see the time and you can move it. When you go to advanced from this screen, you're going to come to the screen that you most often see. So what happens here? I can say that I'm going to go to my crop selection. I want to water. So now we're out of schedule mode. We just want to water. We've come into the greenhouse. We've decided that the geranium and the week 1 need watering. So we're going to select geranium. We're going to select week 1. Now we know that the geranium actually, it's pretty dry. It got away on me. It's almost hydrophobic. So it's going to need a couple passes to really get that down. So I can increase the amount of passes here and say I want 3 passes for geranium, but only 2 passes for the week 1 crop. Now I can save, and here I see many crops selected. I could hit start and it will go and do that work. Or I can say, you know what, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, now's not a good time to water. I'd like to do it tomorrow morning, first thing, maybe before I even get here. I'm an early riser, so I'm going to start at 5. So I got to do a little bit of math. I should have picked 6, it would have been easier. But I'm going to say that that is, right now it's saying 2:35. So I'm going to do the math, and I'm going to say that I got to go ahead by up to 48 hours, do my math, and then hit start. And now it's going to count down those hours and then begin. This is really helpful when at the end of the day you're looking at tomorrow's work. You have 25 booms, yet you know that your pump can only run 5 at a time. So here you can say, hey, I'm going to start these booms at 5, the next 5 booms at 6, the next 5 booms at 7, and throughout you can space however it takes, because you'll know how long it takes to get through your greenhouse, and you can start to pace them out. So then I would hit start. If I'm in this screen and I only have geranium and I save, then I'm only going to see geranium because that's the only crop I have selected. So it's either going to see geranium or it's going to say many crops or whatever one you've designated. Here we have our stop button. So this is at a glance. I'm going to hit stop because the boom is moving and I didn't want it to, or I forgot to change the setting for some reason, and I'm like, oh, stupid Andrew, I should have stopped it, clean it up, and we'll start over. You can hit stop. This is also the area where you see the no motion. So when this boom gets held up, it's going to stop, irrigation is going to shut off, and you're going to get a no motion error come up on the screen. Press the clear the obstacle. Press, and you can either cancel, so we can start over again, or we can hit resume and it will continue where it was. So that's what you're going to see here. You're going to see a little bit of, is it sitting at home? Is it sitting out away? What kind of an error do we have? There's just a couple things that we're showing here. Next, watering, you would see what the schedule is. You can also go to logs, and this will tell you what it did. So if you want to see what things have happened or transpired over the last hours or the last day, you can go through the log, and this is holding up to 20 pages. Eventually it'll start forgetting what it did, but we don't need to keep that much data. But you can go through and you can see that it did a scheduled watering and when it did it. This controller also will take an external start. So if you have an environmental control computer or even a Rainbird irrigation clock, you can take one output from there, tie it into this controller, and have it do the start signal. Now the start is going to be whatever you have here. I have all these crops selected, I have my passes figured out, and I've saved it. Now every time that the environmental control computer says start, it's going to be the same as starting the start button. It's just an automated way to hit go. Also, if you have an environmental control computer and it sends you alarms, however you get that, maybe a sensophone, maybe over your telephone, that way, you can also assign one of the valve outputs to be the no motion error. And that no motion error will be a low voltage wire back to your environmental control computer to shut it off. So here we just want to talk a little bit about, we've gone through a lot of the controller, but there's a few things that we need to touch back on. One of them is no crop. So you'll see it pop up a couple times through the controller, but if we were to press the many crop where we are selecting what crops we want to water, we can press no crop and that'll zero everything out. It's a quick way to get everything off, and then we can start to highlight the crops again that we wish to water. Save. We can also go to setup, and if we go to advanced, we can look at our zone setup. Now, in this case, we have a center pathway in the greenhouse. We have our front gable, if we'll call it. We have a center path, and then we have our end gable. Now, of course, we don't want to water the concrete, and there may be something there like a sprayer or something that we don't want to make wet anyways. So what we could do is we could say zone 3, we could select, say it was geranium and bacopa, zone 3 is a good way down our crop, we could select no crop. And we can select the reverse, no crop, and we can save. So now we have a no crop zone. That way every time the boom travels over the pathway, whether in forward motion or reverse motion, it won't water that space. So that's one way to deal with it. Now we're going to speak a little bit about stop step watering, smart step watering. We can go to system configuration again, and we're going to toggle us to step watering. Save. Now we're going to go to zone setup. We're going to look at zone 1, and we're going to say it's geranium, save, exit, go to crop setup, go to geranium. Now we're going to enable step watering. Now, this starts getting interesting. We have our forward motion again and our reverse motion. We want to toggle valves 1 and 2 on the forward and 3 and 4 on the back. Now, come with me, Rob. As we look at these solenoid valves, we have our forward mist bar and our rear irrigation bar. But if we were going to do stop-step watering, we would remove our T-jet nozzle. We would put in a bit of lock line with a fan nozzle available from Zwart systems. And we would angle this left and angle that right. So as most growers have, we have a staggered pot, right, so that we can get nice round plants and so that we can maximize the space. We're going to want this valve to do that first row, but then the back valve to do the offset row, so that I get my left, right as I step through the pots. So that's why when we go to the controller, we are going to be selecting in the forward 1 and 2 valves, so that I can go back and forth on the left and 3 and 4 on the right. Now, if you are spacing that they're squared, you know, maybe the pots are a square pot and they're not offset spacing, then you would just cycle the 1 valve as you go through. Most people are offsetting, you're going to do both. Anyways, this is typically for larger pots. Maybe not 8-inch, but definitely 10, 12, patio planters, that type of thing. We can say the dwell time. So the dwell time is the time that the boom is actually going to hover and irrigate while over top of that crop. So we're going to stop on that 10-inch hardy mum, and we're going to let that boom sit for 80 seconds to give it a good thorough watering. We can of course change that, and that's our dwell time. Our crop spread is the distance between rows. So we know that we've offset rows. It's a 10-inch pot. It's probably on 24-inch spacing, but the actual row distance between each is maybe something like 18-inch spacing. So we can set that to 18-inch spacing. 18-inch. And then jog speed. How fast do we want that boom to move forward, stop between each cycle? That should be something gentle. You know, let's do something like 35%. We don't need to get it done in record time. We just need it to get done where the mechanical isn't working so hard and we're nicely getting through the crop. So now we have our dwell time of 50 seconds. It's probably a lot of water. Maybe go down to 40 seconds. We have our crop spread, the distance between rows of plants, and we have our jog speed, and we're set to step watering. We're going to save that. Now geranium is saved as a step watering program. So that's all fine. If we want to make it back to normal irrigation again, we have to exit, we have to go to system configuration, we have to put it back to normal, save, have to go to crop setup, go to geranium, take it off of step watering, and now we're back to the way we were just doing regular irrigation and mist. Thank you for joining us today and going through the PR1 controller. We do have the PR2, hence the designation, and we're going to shoot another video on that one shortly, so you can also see what the differences are between the PR1 and the PR2 should you be shopping. We're also coming out with many other products, and so just encourage you to keep looking on our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and see what's coming up at Zwart's. We got a lot of exciting products, and we're for the professional grower. Thank you for joining us.